Hey, everybody, welcome to our opening interview. We always start with the great six-time Ironman World Champion, Mr. Mark Allen. We're at the 70.3 World Championship in beautiful Taupo. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by HOKA, Fly Human Fly, Master Spas, SFuels, Right Fuel, Right Time, Deboer Wetsuits, Quintana, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. So, Mr. Grip, being here in Taupo, what do you see when you come to a beautiful place like this?
Well, the main thing you see is the beauty. I mean, we've got this incredible lake, and I was kind of trying to do a little recon online before I got here, and there's just no way that you could look at a picture online or a video and actually understand how dramatic and beautiful this area is. You know, on the far end of the lake, there's still snow on the highest mountain back there. And the water, when I first looked down, I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen lake water this clear.
This so clear.
Yeah, clear.
Yeah.
And we drove down from Auckland, so it was about 3.5 hours, which was a little bit dicey because they were doing construction and the road was narrow.
And we're driving I've never driven on the other side of the road before, so that was scary just enough. So going, I don't want to turn into somebody.
Yeah. So anyway, and just driving through this incredible scenery and countryside. How can you not be inspired?
Well, and I know for you, indigenous cultures, that's something that's really cool, and we certainly have that here.
Yeah, this is kind of part of that Polynesian triangle, really, and so there's so much of a feel that's similar to Hawaii, but it's also different, and it's sort of like every culture in every part of the world has similarities and things that are different, but it's really cool because I know that thread is going to be woven into a lot of the activities here, and they're going to do an opening blessing.
Very cool.
And just I think at the Parade of Nations, so it's going to be very cool.
And for you, when you look back at your career and how many years you tried to win Ironman World Championship, and what led to that happening in '89 was your time in New Zealand with Scott Molina and Aaron Baker and doing training on the South Island, I think.
We were on the South Island outside of Christchurch.
Yes.
This little town called Sumner, and they gave a car for me to borrow, and it was called a Morris Minor, and it was a little dinky car, and it was a manual. So the stick shift was on the wrong side. The foot pedals were on the right. Was normal, but I had to not only drive on the other side of the road from what I'm used to, but then shift with the opposite hand. So that was, I did it. I didn't hit anything. I survived.
You're still here.
Yeah, but anyway, the main thing about that was it was 6 weeks. We came down in late February and stayed through early part of April, and the pace down here is slower, life is simpler, and being away. This was in 1989. There were no cell phones, there was no computers,
internet, none of that stuff.
No way to stay in communication with life back home, and so my life was simple. I swam, I biked, I ran, I took naps, I ate. And within that simplicity, I saw how much training I could do that was so much beyond anything I'd ever done before. And I realized, when I'm home, I wasn't focusing the right way on my training. I was busying myself with, all the other stuff that I do. And if I just simplified, I was able to do this huge volume of training and absorb it and get stronger from it. And I could just feel this whole new level sort of opening up in me. And I think the athletes are going to see that here. The roads are a little bit rough, so you don't go as fast when you're cycling. It can be very windy, so you don't go as fast as So it's not the kind of training that's good for your speed ego, and you're not going to be setting any Strava, world records. However, you can gain this strength from being here. And like I said in the very beginning, when you ask what is it like coming here, it's inspiring. So you go out for a run and you're going, you're running across these hillsides that seem like they're endless, and you go for bike rides and you're going through mountains and valleys, and there's just that inspiration that nature gives you, that you just don't get when you're on your trainer riding, Zwift.
So the other thing is you had so much success winning Nice 10 times, and but there was something about Kona. Nice was a 6-hour race. Kona was a 9-hour, 8.5 hour race. And the training you did here prepared you for that longer race, probably better than you'd ever been before.
Yeah, I think probably the longest bike ride I had ever done before coming here was around 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
And Scott Molina, who's he's a crazy man. He's like, we're going to go for a long ride. I'm like, okay. And we would go for these rides that were 7, almost 8 hours. And, we did some point to point rides, which are just epic ways to get in some long miles. And like I said, I was absorbing it. And it's like, wow, focus right, keep life simple. Results are going to be there.
The other thing that I remember talking with marathoner Josh Cox when he went to Kenya, and he talked about, I thought I knew what recovery was. Recovery was I finish my workout and I go shopping and I do, get online and do the little things I need to do. When those guys are running 3 times a day, after each run, they would lay on the ground and watch the clouds go by. Because that's recovery. That is rest. Yeah. We don't know what rest is when we're back. Okay, I'm done with my workout. I'm going to go do this and this and this and do my plans and all that stuff. And that's probably the other thing you learned over here was, okay, there's nothing else to do. I'm taking another nap.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously New Zealand is in the modern world, but it's a very different kind of modern world pace.
Yes.
Every like I said, everything is slower. I mean, even just like you walk through the towns, they're small shops, they're one story, you're not in this megalopolis of whatever. And especially now, I think it's probably really challenging for a lot of the athletes, the pros and age groupers, to get really good recovery, because even if you are laying on the couch, you're scrolling through every kind of social media thing, and so your brain is constantly being occupied with stuff and kept on high alert. And 89 back here, like I said, and like you said, you get off your bike and you're kind of like, oh, I think I'll make a cup of tea.
Right. So when we just were in Boulder filming for, Graham Fraser and his son Luke are producing a documentary on Ironman, which is a long time coming, but now is the time. We sort of have, we were lucky enough, it was Dave Scott, it was yourself, it was me, Julie was there, Julie Moss was there, Paul Newby Fraser. It was very special. What did you take away from that? Because you've probably never spent that much time with Dave Scott over the years. Obviously, during your racing careers, you guys spent no time if you weren't racing against each other. But spending time with Dave during that week, what were your thoughts?
I think the overarching thing is I know the parts of myself that are very human, and I have my strengths, I have my weaknesses, I have my frailties, I have my things that I have to overcome. But
right.
A lot of times you don't realize that those people that you're competing against also have to go through their own personal challenges and overcome the parts of themselves that could hold themselves back from having great races. And I also didn't realize maybe some of the motivation that comes from trying to overcome something in your life. And so having that time with Dave, I saw it more than ever, and I've known it, but I saw more than ever that he's very human. He's not invincible.
He's not a robot.
And none of us are. And that, it can be very challenging to overcome doubt or depression.
Yes.
Yeah. And he spoke very openly about
yes,
that.
He did.
And I think when people see that in the documentary, they're going to be like, wow. And I think on another level, that also makes you it kind of endears you to people, because they realize, wait a minute, this guy who looked invincible, and even in loss, he looked invincible and like he was going to come back. You realize, no, he has to deal with the same things that I do as an age grouper, or a person in a relationship with a family. And, he's gone through divorce. He's gone through periods where he was depressed. And,
right.
It continues to be something that he has to manage even today as an over 70.
There was a funny part during your interview where you had been reading up on Dave Scott before your first time to Kona, and he talked about figs. and I eat figs the whole time. So you're like, well, calculating, okay, I need X amount of figs. So what, 45 or something?
Yeah,
You carry like
42.
42 figs in your bike jersey. How many did you get through before you realized you were going to see them again if you ate another fig?
Yeah, I was, back then the sport drink that they had on the course was called Gookinade.
Yes, it was.
And so it's
Bill
like,
Gookin,
okay,
yeah,
Gookinade, I don't care. Maybe it tastes great, but I don't want to drink something called Gookinade. So anyway, Dave Scott, he's the man. He knows what to take in. And I had read that he eats dried figs, so I calculated and came up with the number 42. I need 42 figs to get me through this 112-mile bike ride. And so I had I don't know if they had special need, personal needs bags back then or not, but I had 42 figs stuffed in my wool cycling jersey because there weren't Lycra jerseys back then. And I got to fig number 13. And I pulled out fig number 14, and I'm like, if this goes in, those other 13 are coming back out. And so I had to go to Gookinade. Yummy.
That Gookinade is great. Well, fortunately, you were out of the race pretty early, so you didn't have to worry about drinking that much of it when your derailleur fell off.
Yeah.
So when you and Dave were chatting, and it was so cool because Graham and Luke rented out a diner, and you guys are sitting across from each other, and I felt like this fly on a wall listening to this great conversation. And there was a part of it, and I think I've been sort of guilty about this because as I've been telling the Mark and Dave 89 story, what made this race so special is on the best day that Dave Scott ever had, because he took 18 minutes off his record time of 8:28 from 86, and he went 8:10, took 18 minutes off his course record, and you beat him by 58 seconds, which made that race even that much more important. And Dave was like, well, Bob, that's not my best race. I look at 87 is my best, so I look at you, and I look at 89, and I look at what you did in Nice when you came back to beat Yves Cordier, and I look at 95 when you came back from 13 minutes down to catch 26-year-old Thomas Hellriegel. What do you look at as your best race?
Yeah, that was an interesting moment when we were talking about his greatest race ever, 1989. It was his fastest race ever.
Yeah.
But clearly for him and for me, it's not your fastest race doesn't necessarily mean it was your best. Your best race is the one that you executed beyond anything you thought you could. And for me, that was 1995. When I had to come back from 13 and a half minutes down, beat Thomas Hellriegel. So even though that was not my fastest time, and Dave and our epic IronWar in 1989 will always be remembered as this incredible event, 95 was, I think, my best race because I had to overcome so much to pull off that victory. And when Dave said, no, 89 was not my best race, I realized there was part of that he knew that he could have somehow executed just that little bit better.
Yeah.
But in 87, I think he's looking at that race saying, there's nothing that I could have done to have executed that race better than what I put out on that day.
Yes.
And those are those revealing moments, because we on the outside look at everybody else and go, oh, that was your best race and that one wasn't. But no, that was his best race, 87.
I remember when we were chatting with Jan Frodeno after he won. I think it was his second one in 16, whatever year it was. And said, yeah, you look so in control all day long. He says, yeah, I was planning to drop out 14 times. Right? From the outside, he looked amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And for you, I know the 95 race, and just talking with your masseuse, Michael Rubano, he was like, I was worried, man. I didn't feel, because this guy is working on your body all the time. He says, I didn't feel what I thought I needed to feel until race week. It was like all the massages leading in. He's like, I don't know if we're going to get there.
Yeah.
When did you feel that you were there? Or did you feel you were there?
Honestly, I didn't feel I was there until I passed Hellriegel, mile 23. And Phil Liggett was one of the commentators, and there's a part in the broadcast where I'm closing in on Hellriegel, and I've made up, I go from 13 minutes back to 4 minutes back with 8 miles to go, and I'm closing in, and he goes, It was in the energy lab, and I'm coming back, and I'm getting closer to Hellriegel, and he goes, Alan, like a robot, in perfect control of his functions. And I'm thinking, I was not in perfect control. I was like, yeah, Jan, there were 10,000 times where I was ready to pull the plug, and it looked impossible, and I didn't know how I could keep going, and so I had to keep overcoming that and just getting myself to calm down and to just stay with it and stay engaged and give everything I had and just keep plugging away and see if I could make that win happen. And so, those are the moments that define, I think, personal greatness, whether you're first or last. When you overcome those moments where I don't know if I can keep going, and then you keep going, and then you find that little extra strength, and you get back into that flow, and it's moving again, and then you hit another down point, and another down point, another down point. But eventually, you catch that guy, and you pass him, and victory number 6 all of a sudden is a reality. So it really wasn't until I came up on Thomas and passed him and pulled away where I felt like, okay.
I've had this the whole time. I didn't quite realize it was there.
Yeah.
So it's funny, back in the day when, it was 87, when, Dave runs around the van because even though you're walking, right, and you're done, he doesn't know you're done. And when you come up on Hellriegel, he could be doing a Macca, right? He could be going, okay, nice of this old guy to come up, but now I'm going to go drop him, or what Welchie did to Dave the year before, right? So in your mind, you're not thinking this is over.
No.
Right? Because this guy's he's a lot younger, and he could be playing possum.
Yeah. Far from it that I think it was over. Like I came up behind him, and I thought, okay, has he just been resting, gathering his forces because he knows that I'm coming?
Right.
And so I thought, do I just stay here and try to rest myself? Do I pass him? What do I do? And, life just wants you to make a decision and go with it. There is no right decision. It's just make one and trust in it.
Right.
And I thought, I just need to just go right now, go as hard as I can and see what happens. And I went past him, and it felt like all of a sudden he was able to stay with me because the footsteps stayed the same sound. I wasn't looking back, but
no.
And then I could hear him go, and then the footsteps were gone, and then I was only hearing my own footsteps, and that's when I knew that I finally had it.
Right. And when you're heading towards that finish line and know you're going to win number 6, and I think you'd already made that decision. This is it. To go out at the biggest spotlight, biggest race in history, and biggest race in our sport, and you're going to win your 6th and be able to bow out with the ultimate mic drop. Right. This is it. I'm leaving, and I'm winning. There had to be a feeling of this is just the greatest thing ever.
I had made the decision that this would be my final Ironman, and I said win, lose, or draw, which, it made it so much easier to stick with that decision winning than it would have had I gotten second or fifth or dropped out. But I was very clear that that's how I was going to do it, and it also sort of freed me up because I knew there were no more tomorrows. This was it, and so I think I was able to find that little bit of extra because I knew that there was no way I could make up for this if it didn't turn out the way I'd hoped, and so fortunately. It did. Yeah,
because you think about it, I'm sure afterwards, even when you made that decision, then you hear the following year, Dave Scott's coming back, and you hadn't raced him since you'd been knocking him off at IronWar.
Yeah.
So now he's coming back. Any second thoughts? I want to go against that guy again?
Not that I wanted to go against him, but then he got within 12 seconds of Greg Welch that was. Sorry, that was the year before. The year before.
But he came back in '96.
Yeah, he came back in '96, got fifth, and I think that was actually, he admitted that was kind of his closure because he had gotten past. He was in 6th place, and then he repassed.
Yes.
And so it was sort of like repassing that guy to come back into 5th was almost like a surrogate of repassing Mark Allen when he pulls away, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, it's just fun to see how, both of our lives have evolved since then. We're both still involved with the sport, and he's had some health challenges, obviously, with open heart surgery and coming back from that. And It was, I just am so grateful that, he and I actually do have a friendship, because we had a very intense rivalry, and that could have turned into like a bitter something or other, but it's turned into this, very sweet friendship.
It really is.
And I hope the guys and the gals that are racing here, even though their time is very competitive right now, I hope that over the years that whatever rivalries they have, they turn those into friendships as well.
One of the moments from that week or a couple of days of filming in Boulder, you go to Dave's house, and I think it's the first time you've ever been to Dave's house.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into Dave's house. He's just had, it's like what? How many, like
4 different things repaired.
Yeah, he had 4. Basically, he took his heart out of his body, put new valves in, and put it back in like he's a Chevy or something. And immediately, what does he do? Right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I had never been to his house
Right.
before. We trained in Boulder at the same time for many of the later years of our careers. But of course, I never invited him to my house. Hey, you want to have a hamburger? How about a tofurkey?
Rice
But anyway,
cake. I got rice
yeah.
cake.
So
Put a
anyway,
burger on there, yeah.
and so this was the very first time I'd actually been in his house.
Yes.
And I thought, geez, it took open heart surgery to get us in the same place in at home. So I walk in, he gives me a hug, gives Katie, my partner, a hug, and immediately goes to his counter right next to the door, and he's got those springy hand gripper things that you use to build hand strength, and he hands both of them to me, and he goes, here, let me see how many you can do. I'm trying to get to 100. And I'm like, Dave, no. And he goes, no, I want to see how many you can do. I'm like, oh, good God. I've seen you for like 3.5 seconds, and you've turned the entire thing into a competition. Like
IronWar, the sequel.
Yeah. And so anyway, so as it turned out, I did 84, and he goes, damn, I only did 83 this morning. Cha-ching.
I got him again. IronWar revisited. I got
God.
you, buddy. That is so fun. Just being at that when we were filming the dinner, and it was, again, it was Graham and myself and you and Julie and Dave and Paula, and just hearing, people sharing, and there was a little wine involved. People were sharing a little bit. But Dave was just so honest about dealing with depression. And it's funny because I always wondered why he trained by himself all the time. And now I think I understand that he didn't want people to know that he was, that he had something that he was dealing with, right? Someone, he's dealing with depression. I think I can bury this guy. He wanted to keep himself to himself.
Yeah, he did not reveal that, obviously, during our careers.
Yes.
If he did, I never heard it.
I never did either.
Because I think that would have been a thing in the back of everybody else's mind, like, oh, he isn't invincible. He is. He has a frailty. He has a piece of himself that if it surfaces, I could capitalize on.
Right.
And he was very, like you said, very open and honest, and that he had to pull himself up by the bootstraps a lot of times.
Yes.
I had to do that with a lot of the disappointing races where I thought I was ready to win and put in all that hard work, an entire season of training and coming up short, So we each of us had our things that we had to sort of regroup and reassess and go, okay, can I do this? Can I go for it? And, fortunately we kept finding those reasons to come back.
I love it. Always a pleasure to chat, Mark. Such a treat. We've chatted in a lot of different places, in Nice and Kona, and here. We get to travel the world representing the greatest sport on the planet. Do you still love this sport?
Absolutely, and it's so great to kick off breakfast with Bob in New Zealand for Ironman 70.3 World Championship. It's going to be taking place right behind us here in a couple days.
6,000 people here. Or
oh my gosh!
Like that.
Yeah,
it's nutty.
And I'm so excited for the competition because we're going to see a lot of the short course guys actually competing together in a very, very clearly competitive, men and women, clearly competitive environment on a course that's actually deceptively challenging.
It's over 2,000 feet of climbing, and a lot of it's early, and it's not easy climbing.
No, and like I said, with the road surface here, it's rough. It's hard to get that momentum going. It's not like Challenge Roth where it's like smooth as glass.
Right.
Yeah, and even though it may not feel like it's hot, if it just gets a little bit warm, it's with the humidity here, you feel that too. It's
really do.
Very deceptive.
Yeah, but fun.
Absolutely. And beautiful.
Beautiful. Mark Allen has been our guest, 6-time Ironman World Champion. Again, we are launching day 1 from beautiful Taupo. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and keep checking us out throughout the week. See ya.